Okay, so we're ready to start. Okay, so most of you already know we are recording this session, but if you don't want to be seen, you can turn off your video. If you have questions to ask, use the chat, type your question. And Marilyn and Angela are co-hosts, so they'll take a look at the questions. And of course, you probably all know by now, there's a speaker mode and a gallery mode, and they give you different views. Okay, so if you want to see everybody that's participating, use the gallery mode. If you just want to see whoever's speaking at the time, use the speaker mode. Okay, and everybody should be able to see this presentation at this point. Okay, welcome Justin. Justin's our agent from Vinexx and Vintage Trade. And he's going to talk to you right now about him, who he is and who he works for, and what Prosecco you're tasting. Jason?
Well, thanks, Teresa. I'm really excited to be here, and thank you for the Burlington Wine Club for having me this evening. Hopefully, everyone's got their wines, and we're going to have some fun and taste some good stuff. So as Teresa said, I am working with Vinexx and Vintage Trade Wines, two wine agencies based in the West End. Vintage Trade is based in Burlington, that's where their office is, and Vinexx in Hamilton. Just a little bit about the sort of relationship there. Vinexx has always been a very strong agent in the LCBO side of the business, especially vintages, representing some sort of iconic houses like Muga, Chablessin, Gigal, Champagne Moutar, Champagne Godard. So a lot of sort of well-known houses where Vintage Trades specialized in consignment wines and focusing on the on-premise side of the business. So Rolf Lutz and David Thompson, the owners of each company, have been sort of longtime friends and realized that they could share each other's strengths and really come to market with successfully kind of servicing all service channels in the Ontario wine and beverage alcohol industry. So that's a little bit about our company. Myself, I have now been in the business almost 16 years, basically working most of my career sort of with restaurant side of things, but also the LCBO side of the business as well. So pretty well versed in how all that's pretty much every way in which way beverage alcohol can be distributed, sold, and enjoyed in the province of Ontario. So yeah, no, I've been very fortunate over my career to work with some great wineries, some simple, very basic family boutique houses up to some of the world's most iconic wineries. So well-versed, and have also had the chance to travel a bit to visit some of these producers. So hopefully, well, basically over the years, sort of all that's filled my head with lots of sort of info. So I love having the chance to sort of share that with people and let all this kind of information and passion come spilling out. Most of the wineries that I have that we do work with now are family owned or on the smaller side. So it's really great to get to know the people and understand the stories behind them and really what they believe in. So I think we have some great stuff going on. So let's get to the wine. The first product we have this evening is our Prosecco. So this is the Giusti Rosalia Prosecco. So for those that haven't opened their Prosecco yet, I'll just quickly take you through kind of the proper way to do it. You'll see that there's a little tab usually in the foil. Most sparkling producers now put a little tab in. So you can easily just find that with your nail, pull it, take that off. Then you're faced with a wire cage. If you haven't done this before, basically flip down the little tab, give it about 5 twists, and it should come off. During this process, you want to be always covering the stopper and the cork. Reason being is there's a lot of pressure on the bottle, and if all of a sudden lets go for some reason, you don't want to risk a cork hitting someone in the eye or taking anything out. So what I always say now, we want to open the wine, not like F1 drivers and spray spark bubbly all over the place, but when your cork comes out, you want it to come out with a sigh. So again, always covering the thing. And now at this point, we actually twist the bottle. Most people think you try to force the cork out, but really all it is a nice twist of the bottle. Twisting, 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 and the cork should come out with a gentle sigh or a slight pop. And that's basically the way to do it. One other tip when opening any sparkling wine is the colder the wine is, the better. If your sparkling wine is too warm at the time of opening, the pressure will be higher and your cork will go flying out. So that's something I do always recommend. Also, sometimes use a cloth over top is another kind of great safety method because I have seen people injured when they get hit in the face with a flying cork. So you want to avoid that at all costs. Anyways, a little bit about their wine. So as I said, the producer is Giusti. So it's a family-run winery based in the Aslo region of Veneto. So a nice story about Giusti is Joe Giusti actually grew up in this area, so just north of Treviso, the area, about 45 minutes, kind of northwest of Venice. So
Yeah.
there, and it was after the war, so it was quite an impoverished time. So he was in a house with 40, I think it was about 32 of his cousins. So 4 or 5 families all packed into one house. So Joe saw very little future for himself there, so got on a plane just before his 18th birthday. Originally thought he was going to Australia, ended up in Vancouver. But Joe had a great work ethic and basically started framing houses because he was good with his hands, which turned into his own framing crew, eventually his own construction company. Long story short, the Giusti family now owns one of the largest construction companies in Western Canada. So with Joe's sort of good fortune here in Canada, he went back to his homeland where both his family and his wife's family have always been involved in the wine business. And they initially purchased the 2 hectares of land that his wife, Maria, her family had. And then he went and purchased his old family homestead with some of the vineyards surrounding that. And what Joe says is a lot of his good fortune timed with some unfortunate fortune to families in that region as people were looking to sell land. And so he had some great opportunities by some very high quality, very classic vineyards. So Joe's actually put a lot of back into it. A lot of people think, when you hear sort of the story that he's been amassing sort of vineyards over the last 10 years, you might think he's a big capitalist, but he's actually very passionate about the wine side. I think the construction business is now passed on to the second generation, is in good hands, but his passion is definitely the wine side of things. With these vineyards, as I said, he's really put back into the area, upgrading the vineyards, but also the community. One of the vineyards he bought had an old abandoned abbey on the top of the hill, which was basically destroyed after the second last day of the First World War. It was bombed. So it's this beautiful structure still. So he's actually gone to all the trouble to fix it up to a state where it's safe for people to visit. And he's installed sort of a museum and tasting room that overlooks the vineyards. So a lot of people were very curious why he wanted to invest all this money, but I think it's an area that he's proud of and wanted to invest in it. So what I say about it, if you find a bottle of Giusti, Joe's a bit of a narcissist, which is kind of a good thing in the fact that he wants everything to be the best of the best. So if you see a bottle of Giusti, what's in the bottle is definitely going to be a quality. So let's taste the wine now. So as I said, you can see it's called Rosalia. So Rosalia is the name of the vineyard, which is actually Joe's mother-in-law. So he was quite smart in giving some kudos to his mother-in-law. But this is actually a single vineyard, hand-harvested Prosecco. So in this day and age, as Prosecco's got more and more popular, most people are just trying to get grapes in as efficiently and cost-effectively as possible by machine harvesting. But Joe feels that by hand harvesting, there's definitely a much improved quality element to the wines. I think as you start getting into this, you can definitely see
Actually,
that.
Justin, I'm going to interrupt just for a second. So, hey, folks, cheers.
Salud.
Salud.
So as I was saying, this is actually a great way to start any day. I think part of the success of Prosecco is people in North America and sort of Western Europe are realizing what the Italians have for a long time, that Prosecco is wonderful. You get to start an evening, just a simple gathering with a glass. It's not too complex, it's not too heavy, and pretty much everyone enjoys it. But like every wine, there's sort of Proseccos of different qualities. And you can see once you start smelling and tasting this, there's a lot more depth of flavor, more finesse to it, more structure to the wine. It has a bit more creaminess on the palate than most Proseccos that you see. Part of this is, as I said, coming from one vineyard, and the hand harvesting really focuses the quality element. What they do in the winery helps as well, but also where they're located. The Aslo DOC is a little further south. So the DOCG, which is most famous, is the Val di Biani-Coliano region. And then there's basically the Piave River, which runs north-south. It does a bend, east-west, and then it heads south again through Treviso. Where that bend is, just south of the bend, there's a hill called the Montello Hill. And that's where Giusti's vineyards are based. And what I find about Proseccos from the Aslo region, they always do have this more depth and richness to them. Both the Aslo DOCG and then this, which is a DOC Prosecco. So DOC being not in the DOCG region, but just slightly outside of it. But it's handled the way that they handle all their DOCG wines. Are people enjoying this one?
Excellent. Nice. Okay.
You can remember, don't forget your reactions on the bottom, folks. You can do thumbs up as well.
Yeah. Okay. So we had, so last month we had Nancy Kennedy and Michael German and Chef Maggie and the artichoke and asparagus video. And I'm hoping most people made the actual artichoke and asparagus fritter. We decided not, we had chefs 2 months in a row. Please let me know if you want to have a chef again for either September or October, and we can do something like that again. But we thought we would provide all the food this month. September and October, we're going to remain virtual. And again, I'm going to be sending out a question with a follow-up email from this, or a follow-up Eventbrite notice.
Hello.
Hello?
Hello, how are you?
Okay. Not sure who's coming in or who's talking. Oh,
Yeah, we
Pam.
have some latecomers. That's all. Just carry
Okay,
on.
okay, excellent. Okay, Pam, you made it in. Linda, you made it in. Awesome. So we've just been drinking the Prosecco, and we haven't even started the flight of whites yet. Anyway, I'm just talking for a couple minutes. So we have an agent, a familiar agent, that could join us next month or in October, but she doesn't have any single serve wine items. So she only has a couple of spirits. So I will be asking you in a follow-up email whether or not, even if we don't taste the spirits, whether that would be okay for you guys, and then we'll have a lineup of wines as well. Okay, so I'll be asking you about that. So give that some thoughts, because we're not really a spirits club, but that's one of the options for the package. Okay, and we are going to remain virtual. And then we will probably shut down in November, because it's usually our Christmas party. But if you have any ideas about whether or not you want to continue in November, or you want to try and do a virtual Christmas party, let me know, okay? So you can send me an email. And of course, Justin's here from Vinexx and Vintage Trade. That's for tonight. And you've seen this slide before? Okay, so don't forget to check the Burlington Wine Club. Hello? Yep. We got more new people joining us?
Yep.
Okay, welcome. Okay, you're going to be muted until we have another social hour, but all good. Okay, so check the events page. So anything that's coming up and the links to these meetings will be on that page, and hopefully I'll make sure that they're the correct links. And again, it's really important that you sign up the Friday before the meeting, if at all possible, to make sure you get some wine if you want it, and to make sure you get a food kit. It's also important to note, so we have a promotions page, and I think we even have some new promotions. If anybody's had the Liana wine, the agent's offering $100 off each case. Because we've purchased 4 cases already, you get $100 off the case. So if you've had the wine before and you want to try it again, go for it. But any of the promotions will be up there. Of course, we got Facebook, we got Instagram, and do check out Wine Country Ontario. Thanks, Danielle, for reminding us about that. So if anything's going on in Ontario, and of course our wineries need our support, and the YouTube channel for the Burlington Wine Club, any of the Burlington Wine Club tastings, plus our chef's videos are all up there. So check all those out. And so we have our first flight. So we've got 2 white wines and a rosé. And at this point, I'll turn it back over to Justin to talk about the wines. Hey, Justin, how about you talk about the first wine, and then we'll have people taste the food and see what people think.
Great, thanks, Teresa.
Back over to you.
Hopefully everyone enjoyed the Prosecco. Always a great way to start an evening. So let's get into the whites. So the first one there, if you read sort of through that slide, it's a mouthful. Moncaro, Verdero, Verde, Carupete, Verdicchio,
Sorry, Justin.
Prosecco.
Justin,
Yes.
I'm going to interrupt you again. I'm very sorry. Could you come a little bit closer to your computer? Because I'm having a hard time hearing you, which means everybody else might be as well.
There we go, let's try that. I pushed the computer back. How's that? Is that a bit better?
Yeah, a little bit better. But you
Okay.
you definitely need to speak up.
Yes.
Right.
All right.
Awesome.
Well, as I was saying, now we're going to go to Italy. Well, we're going to stay in Italy, but we're going to move to the Marche region. So Marche is on the east coast, on the Adriatic Sea, and it's actually a region where a lot of the Italians from Venice will head further south to enjoy their summer vacations. If you ever see pictures of that really azure sea, that's the La Marche region. But not only does it sort of have the beautiful beaches and blue sea, but then it also has lovely rolling hillside, and then as you go further inland, even up in the mountains. So the wine we're going to taste is very classic, the Verdicchio grape, which is originally from this area. And the best pairing for it, if you think about it, once you start tasting, you'll see. It's a very simple, classic, some grilled white fish with a bit of lemon juice and salt. So that would be sort of the classic pairing of Verdicchio. What we have here is a Verdicchio that I think shows the freshness, but has a little more depth to it as well. So a little bit about the Moncaro winery. So Moncaro started in 1964. It was a cooperative. And I think a lot of times when people hear cooperative, their minds go to bulk wine, sort of mass-produced stuff, not very much care and thought. But in fact, this cooperative was created to allow smaller wineries to make better quality wine. That by banding together, they could in fact invest and pool their resources, develop a better quality winery, and really have a knowledge base to help them really evolve and go forward. So that's something that's actually quite exciting about this winery. They make a lot, so they do make a range of different wines, but Verdicchio is kind of very classic for what they make out of here. So you'll see the name. This name's a bit of a mouthful. So Moncaro is the winery. Verde Carupete is the particular version of the Verdicchio they make. And then Castello di Jesi, Classico Superiore. So the Castello di Jesi is the DOC of the region. And then anything you see Classico usually means it comes from the heartland or the original quality region. And then Superiore is another denomination where wines, Italian wines, have actually, they're usually a slightly higher alcohol content and then have actually gone through a tasting panel to make sure they are of quality. So they are a superior quality of wine to, say, a basic Verdicchio. The package is as such. So you see here they're using a Bordeaux bottle. The traditional wine, actually, the traditional bottle for this region is that amphora shape, which you'll see. So if you've ever been to the LCBO and that old famous wine, Fasa Battaglia, that's been around forever, and that's sort of the green amphora. That's actually not some sort of kitschy marketing thing that they do, but in fact, that was the original sort of packaging of Verdicchio from way back when. Many sort of more modern producers are going to the Bordeaux bottle, just they like sort of the way it portrays the image a bit more, but also bottling lines and such. It's a little easier to get these bottles. So that's the wine there. So now let's taste it.
All right. And your food pairing for this, so I absolutely agree with Justin, a nice white fish, something mild would have been great. But I chose to do the sweet pea pancakes because of freshness. And actually I have to tell you, I must confess, this is the first time probably in 5 years that I didn't have an opportunity to taste the wines before choosing the food pairings. So I made some assumptions and we're kind of discovering this together. So anyway, the reason I chose the sweet pea pancakes and the red onion dip was for the freshness of the sweet peas and just a reasonable way to package the sweet peas and the freshness of that. And then the red onion dip, just to give it a little bit more depth, but hoping that it wouldn't overwhelm the wine. So let's see, and you tell me. Oops.
Yeah, so going back to sort of, as I said, that sort of white fish and salt and lemon is like a very, I guess, typical. But what I love about Verdicchio is it's super versatile as well. It works with anything that where you need a little bit of more acidity or zip to it. Like I said, anyone who likes Pinot Grigio, I suggest trying Verdicchio. Again, it's that clean, fresh style of wine that pairs with so many different things. This would be great with a charcuterie board. This is an ideal thing just to sip on a hot summer day, like we have coming up over the next weekend and the rest of the summer. So it's just a really versatile wine that I love. And the flavor profile is slightly different. In this wine, you'll see there is a little more richness and depth to it. And that comes from the aging sur lees, or on the lees, the yeast cells. So during winemaking, usually what happens is the yeasts are in the tank, and then as they've done their work and converting sugar to alcohol, they'll die and sink to the bottom of the tank. And a lot of wineries, if you want a very clean, fresh wine, will rack the wine off, so take the wine off the lees. But a little bit of lees contact can actually be very beneficial because it will add a little more depth to the wine, as you're seeing here, and a slight creaminess to the palate. If you leave it too long, it does become maybe a little over yeasty, which is undesirable for maybe a fresh white wine. But I think a little bit of lees contact is a secret to really making this sort of a little more robust, fuller style of Verdicchio.
So how's the wine, folks? Do a thumbs up or send a chat message or whatever.
Lola is commenting, it tastes really good with Japanese style noodles. Any feedback to that, Justin?
Actually, I can, like, just when you say that, the sesame element, I could see a sesame seed working really nicely with this. And also sort of the lemony is almost, yeah, like, I guess you're thinking Asian. I'm starting to think Asian-y flavors. So things like yuzu and that, a little kind of Asian-y citrus. You see a little bit of that in this as well. But yeah, like, this is a style of white wine that's very, very versatile. So it's going to work with lots of different stuff. So I think, yeah, it's something you should explore Verdicchio a little bit more.
Any other comments?
If you have comments, folks, just type them in the chat. And I'll remind you again, this is being recorded. And so if you chose to skip this one in favor of some that are coming later, you can always come back and hear Justin's comments by watching the video again off of the YouTube channel.
Okay. So what about the Gruner Veltliner, Justin? One of my favorites. And
right.
Can't wait
So
to
now
talk about the food pairing for that.
Sure.
Okay.
So we're staying in Europe. We're moving to Austria. So the winery is Rabel Weingut. So Rudy Rabel. He is basically the fifth generation now in the family that has been involved in the wine business. The cellar that they're using actually dates back to the 1700s. So wine has been made in this region, the Chemtal region, for a very long time. And Rudy is a very quiet, he's very humble, but he's a bit of a rock star in the wine world. As I said, sort of he took over from his father in the early 80s. And at that time they had about 20 hectares. Which he's since increased to about 68 hectares. So he's really seen the benefit in having their own estate vineyards that they can work with and really control the whole process from vine to glass. But over that time, Rudy's also been a great student and is very astute and makes some exceptional wines across the board. I think just his attention to detail, his focus on everything he does is second to none. And through that, he's actually been very highly awarded over the years. Such awards as in the London Wine Show, Best White Winemaker of the Year, Best Austrian Winery of the Year, also by Decanter Magazine, Best Austrian Winery of the Year by the Austrian Wine Board. And this is all in the last 10 years. And most recently, the independent Wine and Spirits competition named him best white wine maker of the year. So he's definitely, and actually even Decanter World Wine Awards, I guess one of his most prestigious was best white wine in the world, which he received in 2011. So he's got a long track record of garnering people's attention and getting some excitement. So what we have in the glass tonight is the Rabel Reed Spiegel Gruner Veltliner. So Reed Spiegel, Reed is vineyard, Spiegel is the particular name of the vineyard, and Gruner Veltliner is the grape. So Gruner Veltliner is a grape that's indigenous to Austria and pretty much grows almost entirely in Austria. There's a few other places in the world that are playing around with it, but nobody produces it quite as widely as the folks in Austria. It makes up about 40% of all the white wine plantings are Gruner, so it is their major grape that they're staying behind. Spiegel, as it says, the name of the vineyard, and actually it sort of translates into mirror. And the nature of these hills is it's almost like a little sort of amphitheater or bowl mirror where it reflects the sunlight in. So these are sort of really prime vineyards, which year after year, the grapes are always exceptionally well ripened and gives Rudy sort of a great palate to work with. And as you can see, as you get into this, again, it's all done in stainless steel, so it's a very fresh, bright style of wine. A lot of sort of citrus, soft fruit type things, sort of that soft apricot peachiness, and a little bit of the toll tail. The toll tail sort of sort of note for Gruner is often white pepper, and you do get a little bit of the white pepper in there. And I think a lot of those same characteristics carry over on the palate, especially the white pepper, but then you start getting the minerality as well. And just as the wine sits in your mouth, you just salivate and salivate. And it's almost like people talk about minerality. If you think about picking up a pebble and putting it on your tongue, just that sort of feeling you get as sort of the wet stone. That's sort of the best way to describe minerality. And I think you definitely get that in this wine. So yeah, very versatile. Again, that freshness is going to, I think, work great with the kielbasa, the little fattier element in this dish. And it's a great wine. And I've always, since I've been working with this, I think through the fall, this is sort of my go-to white because it works really well with things like pork and anything sort of pork and apples together, roasted pork, roasted apples. I've just been using a lot of sort of pork apple combinations when I play with this wine. But again, as you can see by itself, absolutely delicious. This also goes extremely well with sort of Asian foods because it does have this little exotic fruit kind of in the back end of it. Just delicious.
Okay, so speaking of food, so my favorite pairing with Gruner Veltliner is if you ever go to a Hungarian restaurant or a German restaurant and you order Wiener Schnitzel, always ask for a Gruner Veltliner. Okay, that is the natural pairing. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. So anyway, but I couldn't figure out how to do Wiener Schnitzel properly and healthily in the kits. But I always have a side of sauerkraut with my Wiener Schnitzel. And so I thought and it goes beautifully with the Gruner. So I thought, well, I'll do a dish that's sauerkraut and potatoes and kielbasa, which is very Austrian German in style. And anyway, let me know what you think. But if you're ever in a Hungarian or German restaurant and you're going to order Wiener Schnitzel, always order a Gruner Veltliner. Okay? That is my tip of the day.
There is a gorgeous Hungarian restaurant in Waterdown in these COVID times. I'm not certain if they're still operational, but right in the main area near the grocery store. So they do great paprikash and lots of Hungarian specialties there if you're looking for a treat.
Excellent. Good to know because I had not found one in the area. I still head back to Toronto for my Hungarian restaurant. So that's wonderful to know, actually. And I'm assuming they have Gruner on the wine list. But if not, we'll have to change that.
So we're getting good feedback. Thank you all. Excellent pairing, great tips.
Yeah, and I actually didn't show the bottle, but this is the bottle here. Marilyn was mentioning today, because it's so long, it was very awkward to put in the wine kits. And whenever we can't use an original case, this is an odd bottle to pack. It's a traditional bottle that you'll find in sort of Germany, Austria, especially for sort of Gruner Veltliner and white wines of that nature. You'll see that there actually is sort of a little crow on the label, and rabble is actually a loose translation of the Germanic word for crow or raven. That's why those are there. And you'll see Rudy always puts those on his single vineyard wines. So when he does make several different tiers of wine, but if you see the crow, you'll know though that's part of the single vineyard series. Any further questions or comments about the Gruner? I just love Gruner because it's fun. It's not only a delicious wine, but it's kind of fun to say, fun to talk about. And if you pull a bottle of this out, people may think, what is that? The Gruner, the Veltliner? But once they taste it, they're going to enjoy it. So just call it Gruner or GV and enjoy. Well, let's move on to a little bit of rosé. So now we're going to go to south of France. And it's a winery that is fairly new to us, but we're very excited. They came aboard with us about 18 months ago. But what we've seen from them so far is nothing but great quality. So the rosé we're doing is their Palm par l'Escarel is the name of the particular wine. And it is a rosé. So they make a full range of white wines, rosés, and red wines. But it's the red wine that the rosé that we initially brought in this year just to kind of hit the season because we thought this stuff's absolutely delicious. So a little bit about the winery. It is a family-owned winery. The owner had made a bit of a fortune. Jan Piern made some money in, I believe, is the financial industry, but has always enjoyed wine and had the idea and the passion and the drive to have his own winery, and really a winery that could follow his sort of philosophies and ideas about sort of the way the world and the wine world should be going. So his estate is just over 1,000 hectares. And a lot of that, I'd say almost 80%, is actually left as natural land. So he's really working on trying to get as much biodiversity in the area, maintaining biodiversity, encouraging biodiversity, both in kind of his wildlands, but then also in his vineyards. And then this philosophy also sort of translates into what he's doing with his wine. So all the farming now is organic. Many of the vineyard plots are certified, more moving towards certification. So that's sort of a big belief that he has. The grapes that they're making most of the rosé out are the traditional grapes of the southern France, Syrah, Mourvèdre, Cinsault, Grenache go into these. This one's an interesting blend though compared to some of the others. It's actually Caldoc, Grenache, and Merlot, which is kind of neat. I'm seeing more and more rosé using a little bit of Merlot, which I'm finding that's really kind of a little more depth to it. But I think when you see this wine, it's that lovely color that everyone's really looking for. That's so popular right now. That's sort of very light, fresh, onion skin type color. And I think what I love about rosé, it's that great bridge on a hot summer day when you want something maybe a little more robust than a white wine, a little more flavor. Rosé has it, and I think this develops that. You sort of get that red currant fruit. I think an early tasting note I did on this, I said it was sort of like red currant and then eating red currants, then walking past a raspberry patch, because you sort of get that sort of wild raspberry with a little bit of herbaceousness in there as well. And you see on the palate, definitely dry, fresh, crisp, but then it has that, again, that sort of lovely red fruit, that curranty, kind of slight tart currant raspberry kind of note going on, with a little chalky structure on the finish, I think, which makes this wine, again, a great wine that's going to pair well with lots of different foods. Again, a wine that you could just sit by itself on the patio, but then I think it's going to work with a charcuterie plate. This would definitely work with some grilled salmon in that element, and even kind of things sort of like great, like it would be a great wine kind of with a mixed grill off the barbecue this time of year.
Okay. So, and the food pairing for this one is, so first of all, I love rosés in the summer. Rosé is just such a versatile wine, cool, pink, got some body to it. And so the beet, walnut, and cheese salad. So it's roasted beets, it's walnuts toasted in maple syrup, and goat cheese. Just a nice, to me, a nice summer lunch, and to go with a rosé wine. Like you could almost make a whole meal of the lunch of the salad and the rosé wine. So yeah, again, let me know what you think. And for the non-vegans in the crowd, the walnuts were sauteed in maple syrup, but also butter. So then they were like done in butter, and the cheese is a goat cheese, and the beets were roasted with a little bit of olive oil and salt and pepper.
Yeah, and I think going back to the sort of lunch, that's sort of my ideal lunch. Often I'll have a simple salad such as this, and then just a glass of rosé kind of really elevates it to that next level, having that little bit of wine. And if I didn't show you the packaging, that's it. A really nice, elegant packaging, just the sort of simple palm leaf on it. So they really thought this out well. I think it's a really, a winery that I'm really excited to get to work a bit more with. I've had a chance for a few of their whites, this rosé, and potentially I think in the fall, winter, we're going to see some of the reds coming in as well. So yeah, Chateau Lascarel, definitely one to look out for.
Excellent. So that's the end of the first flight. Why don't we take a couple of minutes if anybody's got, Marilyn, if anybody sent any questions in or whatever, and you can sit and finish your wines, and then we'll go on to the red wine flight. Marilyn, I see 11 comments in chat. Is that?
Yeah, so we're trying to track down the name of the restaurant in Waterdown in these COVID times, and potentially before it may have been that they're no longer with us. But Anne reminded us you can never go wrong with the Black Forest Inn in Hamilton.
That's true. I have actually been there. Good suggestion, Anne.
Yeah.
I wonder if they do takeout.
In these COVID times, I think you'd be crazy not to.
A virtual dinner.
Yeah.
Yes. Anyway.
So a question for Justin, it's pretty much the same as who's your favorite child. What's your best or preferred glass of sparkling?
Ooh, that's tricky. Yes, you can't beat good champagne, but unfortunately not all of us drink champagne or can drink champagne every day. But even if I could, I think it's great to mix it up. As I said, Prosecco I love. It's sort of that gateway sparkling to get people interested in Prosecco, because I think it's just so casual and easy. And I've had so many friends go, oh, I don't really like champagne. I said, well, try this. I go, oh, that's good. And it's just, I think, that a little more casual style. So Prosecco, I think, is something that gets everyone to sparkling, so I pay a lot of credit. And I think what we're starting to see now is even drier styles of sparkling. Because the one we had this evening, the Giusti, that's made in the extra dry style, which actually means there's a bit of residual. But we're starting to see more brew and extra brew Prosecco's being made, so even drier and fresher. But one thing you have to be a little cautious with as you get drier in the Prosecco realm is the great thing of that little bit of residual sugar in Prosecco really helps carry the aromatics and freshness. So that's just a little bit more about Prosecco. So Prosecco, I said, yeah, every day, it's a great way to sort of get it. It's a great gateway sparkling. I'm a huge fan of Cremant because I find they're great value. So if you're not familiar with the term Cremant, Cremant is a sparkling wine made in the classic Champagne method, but from outside of the Champagne region. So a little bit of sort of info on the difference between different methods of making sparkling wine. What they call the Champenoise method or the Classico method is where the second fermentation takes place in the bottle. So this is sort of what was invented as champagne. So basically, champagne starts as a still wine, starts as a still wine. Then a second fermentation is created. So that still wine is put into a bottle, then they add some sugar and yeast, put a basic beer cap or crown cap on it, and leave it alone for a while. So that's then what starts happening is a second fermentation happens, and the byproduct of fermentation is alcohol, but also carbon dioxide. So by having that happening in a closed environment, that carbon dioxide is then trapped in the wine, thus creating the sparkle. So that is the kind of classic champagne method, and that's what in France the Cremant emulates as well. Cremants are not usually aged as long as champagne, but I think they're usually great value. And you get Cremant from sort of all over France. Cremant de Bourgogne would be made out of Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, very much like champagne is. But then you also see Cremant d'Alsace, which can be made from Riesling and some of the different Alsatian grapes. There's Cremant de Bordeaux, Cremant de Jura. So there's Cremants from all over. So I will regularly reach to Cremant. Out of Italy, going back that way, I love Franciacorta. So Franciacorta is basically Italy's champagne. So they're basically emulating champagne by using traditional Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, Pinot Bianco, so Pinot Blanc would be kind of in their blend there. And they're making it where it's extended aging on the wheat, usually 2 years or more, which gives a lot more of that complexity, depth, bitterness. So Franciacorta is always a great wine too. Sparkling wine of Ontario, a big fan of as well. So I just love bubbles from everywhere. I guess
in Ontario, the Entourage Brutes from Jackson Triggs is excellent.
Yeah.
They call that the Poor Man's Veuve. Some wine writers have called it that. Yeah, right. So that's kind of cool. Yeah. Yeah,
no, Ontario's got a climate as well. If you've ever had the chance to see some of the bubbles coming out of Nova Scotia, there's some exciting things there. Lacadie, Benjamin Bridge. Nova Scotia is really, Lightfoot Wolfville is another house in Nova Scotia that's making some great bubbles. They realized that their climate is very similar to Champagne, similar soils, marginal climate, and making sort of high acid champagne style wines works really well. So long story short, what is my favorite sparkling wine? Mostly whatever is in my glass that day. Because I always sort of drink them all, try them all. So, and there's a place for all of them.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to do...
And one actually, going back to bubbles, I think sort of the flute is sort of the tradition is what a lot of people reach for when they're going to pour sparkling wine. But what I think is actually a better style of glass is something like along this line, if you can see that fairly well, where it has a little bit broader in the middle, but then still tapers up. So I think a lot of people, the great thing there's been an evolution. Originally, sparkling wine was served in a coupe, which is very festive and fun. But the problem is the bubbles, you lose all your bubbles very quickly because they just all hit the surface and off they go. The flute came about as a way to kind of trap your bubbles so they stay in the wine much longer. But the downside of the flute is lovely and fun to drink out of is you don't really get the aromatics. And you have to remember sparkling wine is a wine. And if you're spending, especially on sort of a good grower champagne, if you're investing the money to enjoy that, you want to enjoy every element of the wine, not just sort of the flavors and that, but also the aromas. So a glass like this, I find, or something with a little wider, will allow you to enjoy, will give you sort of the more experience. So it's that sort of nice cross in between. And then some regions, sort of Prosecco-like, have created their own sort of glass like this, where you can see it's sort of, again, very fine at the bottom, has a nice bulbous, but then tapers back in. So this actually is a Franciacorta glass. So again, sparkling wine from Italy, but the Prosecco region has created a glass very similar to this as well. So there's kind of different ranges of glassware that you can enjoy your sparkling wine out of.
And totally different opinions on the whole glass thing, but very, very interesting. And I know Beth and Martin, you're interested in doing tastings with the different glasses, and it is kind of interesting, and there are different things that come out of the different glasses, and the whole sparkling area is a new area for different glasses and very controversial. And Justin, just to let you know, I totally disagree with you.
What's your preferred glass then?
But that's what the industry is about, and that's what makes it interesting, right?
Right.
Anyway, I think we should move on to our red flight, because we have some awesome reds, and that's going to take a little while.
Okay, let me just pull mine up here.
Okay.
Good. All right. So first red of the evening. is everyone should have received their Chianti. The Principini Corsini is the Chianti Classico that you would have received in the half bottle. So that's it there. We also do
not too shabby that there's a half bottle in your kit, huh?
So then we have it in full bottles as well. So we can fill all of your needs. Anyways, a little bit about the winery. Again, family run, still family run. These guys are even a little more historic than who we've talked about so far. So the Corsini family, it actually settled just outside of Florence. There's documentation that they settled around Florence the 1100s. So long history there. The estate that they're on now, the La Corte estate, they purchased in 1604. And that is where they built the wine. They have olive groves, vineyards, plus the winery and their villa, which they've now moved back into. So the winery has actually been in the winery these days, the same winery building that they used back in the 1600s. So again, a long, deep history here for the Corsini family. So as I said, La Corte is their historic property that they're based on. This is a Chianti Classico. So again, we hear the term Classico, meaning it's from the heart region. So Chianti is almost like a dartboard, where if you look at the Classico region is basically between Florence in the north, Siena in the south. It sort of loosely encompasses that area. But then outside of that, you'll have other Chianti DOCs, Chianti Rufina, Chianti Piezza, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a wider range. And then you just have the sort of general Chianti DOC, which can be grapes from that kind of everywhere from sort of anywhere inside that outer ring. So there's sort of different levels of Chianti. But the Classico is what everyone sort of looks to as the truest representation of Chianti. So this family, again, much like Escarel, they're very focused. They've taken a great leap in their sort of idea of being a little more kind to nature. So all of now, they've gone as far as they started with sustainable farming, and now everything they do is certified organic, both in the vineyard and in the winery. This is also a certified vegan wine as well. And it's a wine that sort of, I feel, is a great sort of good representation of Chianti Classico. People, if you're wondering about sort of vegan and wines, I guess initially you might think, aren't all wines vegan? They're just made out of grapes. So what would make them non-vegan? Traditionally, sort of wine being an agricultural product, and maybe initially a lot of sort of winery makers had mixed agriculture on their farms. The fining process, where the wine is clarified, a lot of people would use different ingredients, things such as ox blood, isinglass, egg whites, isinglass being a protein that comes out of fish bladders. So those were actually quite common much of the time in sort of the production of wine during the fining process. It doesn't end up in the final wine because those are used to clarify the wine and then removed. But by not using those, it allows the wine to be vegan certified. So let's get into the wine. So the wine, again, they're using just the indigenous grapes, Sangiovese and Caniolo in this blend. The Chianti laws do allow up to 20% other grapes, which would be Sangiovese 80%, but then the 20% could be indigenous varietals, but also international varietals. Cabernet Sauvignon, Syrah, and Merlot are also equally allowed now in the DOC. But they've decided to stick with the traditional native grapes. So here we're seeing, as I said, 80%, this vintage, 85% Sangiovese, 10% Caniolo, and then 5% Ciligiolo, which is another sort of indigenous grape of the region. And I always find their wines to be quite perfumed. So you can see sort of that nice, sort of lifted cherry, dry cherry type of aroma on these ones. A little bit of herbaceousness and sort of almost sandalwood.
So, and we'll come back to you, Justin, to talk more. But the food pairing for this is a simple Very, very simple Tuscan pasta. For those of you that either were in Italy with me or were watching what was happening, part of this recipe came from Sylvie, and it's a classic, just very, very simple pasta. I didn't go and make the actual peachy, so we had the spaghettini, but it's a classic Tuscan pasta. The only difference is I used Parmesan cheese as opposed to the classic Tuscan cheese. But so anyway, hopefully it holds up to the Chianti, and that's a lovely Chianti. Anyway, back to you, Justin.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I'm just letting the wine sort of roll around in my mouth, and yeah, I think Teresa agrees. This is a definitely well done wine. I think Chianti, sort of like a lot of Italian wines, has gone through sort of a bit of a roller coaster, where maybe it's classic of the region, and then it became popular maybe in North America. Every little sort of checkered red and white tablecloth trattoria all across North America wanted Chianti Valpolicella, so it was a little overproduced, mass-produced, and made in very simple ways. But I think a lot of people are kind of finding their focus again, and some great wineries like Corsini are really sort of driving things forward. You can see that there's elegance here, there's concentration, there's finesse, sort of the whole package all in one. And this is a wine that I think is drinking beautifully now. It's 2016, but this will last another 5 years very easily. So yeah, buying a case is not a hardship, because I think it'll definitely, every year, it'll kind of evolve and get a little bit, evolve a little bit. And really, I think in the next 2 to 3 years, this wine will be even better.
So Justin, talk about, so this is in a half bottle size. Will that last 5 years, or what's the difference between bottles in half bottles and large bottles in terms of cellaring capabilities?
Cellaring, generally, your bigger your bottle, the slower the wine will age. So half bottles are great, just kind of as a great serving for one person, or if you're kind of wanting to do a tasting menu and things that way. But they generally won't age as long as a regular 750 bottle or magnums. I think if you're looking to hold on to wines for anniversaries or special occasions, if you're buying bottles for your children or grandchildren, magnum or larger formats may be the better way to go. But for immediate enjoyment, half bottles are great. That said, though, I have recently drunk some 04, 05 Shout Enough to Pap that was in half bottles, and they were still showing really well. Actually, I opened two. One was kind of so-so. The other one was fantastic. So that was strictly up to bottle variation, but wines can age in half bottles. But I think in general, if you're looking to age something, the bigger the bottle, the better. The smaller the bottle, the faster they'll age, or the faster they'll evolve.
Excellent. So if people want to buy this wine for the summer, for drinking, and they don't want to open a whole bottle, the half bottle's great. If they want to lay some down for a while, or combination of maybe a full bottle.
And unfortunately, I don't have this in magnums right now. We don't have.
Yeah, but even the 750.
And folks, never throw out your small bottles either, because you can pour that big 750 out and have it over a number of nights. So never throw out your 200 mils or your half bottles. Fill them right to the top, and they'll just keep just as well.
Yeah, that's a great tip. That really what is sort of the deterrent or the killer of wine is oxygen. So by having half a bottle full of air, by decanting into that half bottle, pretty much right up to the top, and putting your cork in or screw cap. I think keeping a few screw cap half bottles is even better. You just fill those up, and it's a great way of sort of portion control if you're going through or several bottles where you want to save something for a few days. And sometimes you'll even find that wine that's in your half bottle in a day or two might even be better. Just a little bit of oxygenation will just help sort of soften the wine out a little bit and allow it to kind of come into its own. So any questions about the Chianti? Yeah, one more. That's good.
A lot of favorable comments in the chat. I think it was not only a great wine, but a great pairing.
Good.
And Chianti's, I think
So,
it's a natural for anything sort of tomato based. Which I think there's a bit of homemade pizza waiting for me later with the tomato sauce. So I think I'll save a little bit to go with that. But yeah, no, I think Chianti's actually a really versatile wine. That freshness and acidity works anything with the dishes with acidity. So of course, tomato-based dishes. I will also like it kind of mushroom-based dishes as well, because there is a slight kind of, especially this Chianti, there is a slight earthiness to it because using just the indigenous grapes. And it's light and fresh, and it's a very lively style of wine. That it's not too heavy, so it's going to actually pair really well with different things. Barbecue actually is something that, like a burger, that you need a little bit of acidity or freshness to really work with kind of the richer meats or slightly sweeter sauces. So wines like this are super versatile. So I think Chianti is a good thing to always have a few bottles on hand.
okay.
Great.
Now,
So
tell
let's
us about
move
the
on to
star.
our little bottle. So what we have here, I heard some people refer to as the mystery bottle, but what in fact it is the Gigan Hermitage 2016, which is here. So again, another family-run winery, very well-known winery in the world. Let me just do a little housekeeping before we get into this. I think I heard earlier some people saying that they're having trouble getting into the bottle. So to prevent them leaking and make sure the wines got to you in the best way they could, these particular bottles, if you undo the top, you'll see there's a little cap inside. You might be able to pop that with your nail. If not, just like a sort of a dinner knife, butter knife, just get under the lip of it, and it should lift right out. Just like that. And then you can pour your wine. So the Gigan family, they're based in the northern Rhone Valley, so about 100 kilometers south of Lyon. Just to give you a geographic sort of reference. The Rhone Valley is divided into two, Northern Rhone, and Southern Rhone. The Southern Rhone is known for wines such as Côte de Rhône, the Châteauneuf-du-Pape, Gigondas, Bacras, wines sort of those ilk. In the Northern Rhone, where the hillsides are a little steeper and the valleys are narrower, you'll get Hermitage, Cros Hermitage, Côte Rôtie, Saint-Joseph, Conduire. So those are some of the names of the Northern Rhone. So a little bit, so today we're going to enjoy a Cros Hermitage. So the Hermitage is a particular hill area, and the Cros Hermitage is the area that sort of sits above the hill and surrounds it. So that's where the Cros Hermitage grapes come from. This wine is 100% Syrah, and as I said, 2016 is the vintage. A little bit about the Gigan family. Etienne Gigan was the founder, and he actually acquired his vineyards in Côte Rôtie sort of in between the two world wars. And I think at that time, sort of viticulture and that were kind of maybe one of the last things on people's minds, but I think he was very had a good intuition about himself and realized that it was a great time to purchase some vineyards, and he had the passion to make that. So he's able to acquire some great vineyards during that time. So the family was originally based in the Northern Rhone. Then during the second generation, they made wine not only in the Northern Rhone off their own vineyards, but then started becoming a bit of an negociant where they were buying grapes, buying wines, and bottling wines from many different regions throughout the Rhone. So pretty much all the regions that I mentioned, sort of both in north and south, Gigan does make grapes in. So Philippe Gigan is sort of running the show now. His father is still very actively involved, and they are very thoughtful, very intellectual about the whole process. Almost daily, Philippe and his father do meet, and they taste wine, discuss wine, and comparing vintages and how they're going to move forward with each year. And they have a range of wine from their sort of basic Côte de Rhône, which you can find in the vintages section of the LCBO, all the way up to their most iconic Lala wines, as we call them. 3 single vineyards from the Côte Rôtie, La Mouline, La Ladon, and La Turque. And those are really sort of some of the most iconic wines of the Rhone Valley. So they're a great house that way, that they make such a wide spectrum. But speaking with Philippe, he says it's almost easy to make his sort of top 3 iconic wines and his other Côte Rôties, but it's almost his basic Côte de Rhône that he's most proud about, because in fact he sources grapes from over 800 different growers to be able to blend the wines he does. He says it's a bit crazy doing that because he could go to 40 guys and get the same amount of grapes that he wants, but he knows that each specific one brings something into that giant blend that he puts together. So it's quite amazing that the intellect that he puts into building these wines. And yes, he's always very much on and thinking about that way. So, as I said, it's a pleasure to sort of work at this house because they do have a great name. The one downside I say about their labels is they all look the same other than the one word. So sometimes we've had people go to grab a bottle of just basic Cote Rôtie and they end up pulling something a little bit more expensive than they initially thought they drink that night. But just pay attention to that, to whatever's written in the middle. So, basic Cros Hermitage, the way Philippe describes it, is where Côte du Rhône is the gateway to the southern Rhone, Cros Hermitage is the gateway to the northern Rhone. So it really starts giving you a sense of what the wines are like in the region and what they have to offer when you're dealing with Syrah, the northern Rhone. Where the south, so a little bit more about the two regions, the south is generally much warmer, so you get riper wines, more Grenache-based wines, so definitely riper, richer style of wine. Where in the north, it's cooler and steeper hillsides, so much poorer soils, more well-drained soils, so the vines struggle a little bit. So you get a slightly different profile. In the north, people often talk about kind of smoked meat, cooked meat style, kind of in the wines.
So Justin, people are so excited. They'd like to know what is the price of the bottle.
This bottle retails for $45.
$45.
Yeah.
So folks, the way we approach a price point like that in our house is if you went out to a restaurant and you bought a Wolf Blast, because that's the only white Chardonnay they had on the menu, they'd charge you $45 for that. So our approach is buy a good bottle of wine for $45 and stay home and enjoy it. Maybe Justin will agree.
I've had that conversation with people before when talking about price points, that they go, ooh, like that bottle of Amarone, $60, that sounds expensive. But I sort of put in context that it's less than you'd spend on an evening out, and you could sort of just get a really nice piece of cheese, a really good bottle of wine. Sorry?
You just cut out a little bit, Justin, but it's all right.
Okay, no, I was just going to basically say, when you look at bottles of wine, I think there is value in buying those premium wines and enjoying them at home. And you don't have to go extravagant. Something as simple as a couple of good bits of cheese and a good bit of wine and some good company. And I think that's great value.
And they don't serve wine in the home, so you should drink wine now.
That is true. I have a comment to that as I've seen a lot of people at very impressive cellars, but I've seen many people as they get older drink less and less, and a lot of these wines start going to waste. So,
right, it's a living product. We're being asked, Justin, is it available at the LCBO, or would we order it directly from you?
The 2016 is exclusively through us right now. The 2017, there was a little bit that did come through Vintages. I'm not sure if any of that's left, but we usually try to have something a little older. And 16, this wine did get some good ratings, and having that bit of it, and it was a good vintage, so we made a point of having that available through us. So that can be ordered directly through us. And
for those of you that don't want to order an entire case, I'm going to order a case, and the first, 8 people or whatever that want to buy a bottle, let me know. And if there's more than that, or if you want to buy a case, awesome.
I have 6 cases left in stock right now.
Okay.
What I heard was party at Teresa's house. Maybe I misheard.
No. But I'll buy a case, and you can buy from Teresa's cases.
Perfect. I think with your discretion, Teresa, we should be moving on.
Yep, absolutely. Hey.
All right. So now hopefully everyone enjoyed that. I think it's great to sort of get a snapshot into sort of one of the classic regions. One last comment just sort of about that. The Rhone Valley is actually the homeland of Syrah or Shiraz. So Shiraz, Syrah being one of those international grapes, the Northern Rhone is where that grape originally came from. So just to kind of add that into the context. So our final red wine of the night, we sort of did a switch around. We're going from sort of iconic to what I feel is great value. We're going to South Africa. Let me grab my bottle. To this one here. It is the Protea Merlot. I think maybe initially people go, what? Merlot? Really, Justin? Merlot? But I think this one, I think is a gem. I think it's going to really reinvigorate people's interest in the Merlot grape if you haven't sort of been reintroduced and invigorated by it recently. So a little bit about this. As I said, this wine is, coming out of South Africa. South Africa is a region I am extremely passionate about. I think there's some really exciting things going on there. Right over the last 10 years, but I think the last 5 years, things have really elevated. South Africa is an interesting region. It's one of those, a lot of people describe it as a new wine region, but in fact, they've been making wine in South Africa since the mid 1600s. So 1653, the first grapes were planted by the French Huguenots, who sort of were persecuted in France, left France, went through Holland, and then down to the Cape, where they started spreading inland and planting grapes they brought with them. So wine has been made in that area for a very, very long time. The evolution, I think initially a lot of it was made and became a very focused on fortified wines, kind of sweeter fortified styles of wines, which I think was partially because they were put on boats to take back north to England and France. But over time, things kept evolving. Apartheid, I think, was a huge sort of blockade for the South African wine industry, because basically it sort of shut them off from the rest of the world and really sort of retarded their progress. And as everyone else was moving forward and learning better ways to make wine, they were sort of stuck where they were. And then when I think especially in our market, I think people's opinion of South African wines, when borders finally started opening up, apartheid was over and they were allowed to export again, that what we were seeing was wines that came from the big cooperatives because they happened to have stocks that they'd fill orders for that people wanted. But unfortunately, what those wines were more bulk wines, more basic wines, and really not a true expression of what could be done there. I think sort of, especially in a monopoly system, I don't think the LCBO did any favors to the South African wine category, because when sort of the $10 wines, $11 wines became popular, they just bought more and more $10, $11 wines. So the Two Oceans, which sort of is great value, and I know a lot of people sort of went to for sort of their party wine, there is more and more options of that. But I think what we've really started to see now is the winemakers are a lot more educated. They have a lot more knowledge. They've traveled. They taste wine from all over the world. They've worked in many different wine regions. So the young and up and coming winemakers have a real passion and a knowledge, and they know now they've experienced wine from other parts of the world, and they can now take that sort of knowledge and quality winemaking and put it in place in their home region. Someone actually told me a story that once upon a time, if you played for the South African national rugby team, part of your retirement package was getting a vineyard. So a lot of these big burly guys were making sort of big burly wines, over extracted, high alcohol, which I think a lot of people thought that was quality wine. But what I found is that there's a movement, like in much of the world, looking for cooler climate parts of the country, more higher elevation, and really figuring out how to work grapes well. One great example is Pinotage, which was sort of South Africa's signature grape. It's a combination of Cinsault and Pinot Noir were bred together to make the Pinotage grape. And I think for so long, people made it that sort of rugby player style, that big burly style of wine, which I think brought out some characteristics of the wine, but I think it maybe wasn't the best. I've had the chance to try some Pinotage, which was made in more of a strain style and an elegant style, and it was absolutely delicious and blew my mind of just sort of the evolution that once you figure out what to do with the right grapes, that's what really good things and exciting things can happen in this region. So going back to what we have here, so Protea, as I said, it's made by the Rupert Wine Group, and it's a very cool wine. This wine actually has a great following in South Africa, very much so for the packaging. So the packaging was actually done by a South African designer who's now based in New York. And every different varietal in this series has a different sort of wallpaper on it. The labels are removable, so you can simply just soak them or peel them off. And the coolest thing is the top. It's a cork, but it just twists out. So for those who have done it. So this wine, this bottle basically has a sort of a second life. And unlike a normal cork, that won't swell up. So it can just easily be put back into the bottle. So these bottles have definitely got a second life for use because people are putting sort of water into them. Any bottle, if they're putting cocktails, they're pre-batching cocktails, they're putting in this sparkling water, olive oil. So these bottles have really found a great sort of second use. So they have a bit of a great following to them. But then what's in the bottle is pretty impressive as well. So this is 100% Merlot. It's labeled as Western Cape, so sort of the greater Cape region. So it's coming out of a few different regions, grapes in Darling, Franschhoek, Elgin. So they're actually getting grapes from a few different regions. It's made by the Rupert Wine Group, whose flagship winery is Anthony Rupert. And they sort of have a great range of wine. So as I said, the Protea line is all varietally driven. And right now they have 7 different ones. We're going to be seeing the Rosé from these guys and the Sauvignon Blanc and Chardonnay coming in about 3 to 4 weeks time. So do that. So then what's in the glass? Well, 100% Merlot. And why I think this is one of my most favorite sort of good value summer go-to wines. It's ripe, it's easy to drink. It's got a little bit of herbaceousness, which I think adds some complexity to the wine. And then on the palate, you can see smooth, round, sort of dark fruit, kind of the dark plum, a little bit of kick, kind of a bright red fruit, and then just that slight herbaceousness that I think makes it a little interesting, adds some structure, and makes the wine refreshing. And what I love about this is even though the grapes are coming from fairly warm regions, they're able to maintain sort of a nice freshness to the wine as well. So we sort of switched this, because I know traditionally tasting, maybe you crescendo up to your top wine, but with chocolate being sort of on the end of this tasting, as far as the food pairings, we thought that this little riper style of wine would work better with the chocolate, maybe than the Clos Hermitage would.
Mm.
Anyone opened the wine? I think Bruce and Sue opened the wine and they've been enjoying it. Great comments. Sue has a question. This is a wine from 2019. Justin, can you comment on how were the earlier years of this wine?
I've only had the chance to try the 19, which we just got. I tried the 18, I think was of equal quality. Did we try the 17? No, I think the first vintage we brought into this wine was 2018. So I haven't had the chance to try older vintages. But a region like South Africa is a region where year after year, quality is pretty consistent. I think back in the days where when we're looking at cooler climate regions like France, and things were so much more weather dependent, you needed to know your vintages, because sure, it's great to know when there's a great vintage, but you also need to know when the bad vintages were to avoid. But I think especially in these regions such as Australia, California, South Africa would fall into that, these kind of more moderate regions. I think year after year, you're getting consistently good wines. So I actually found I had a little bit of the last vintage of this wine, which I enjoyed a few days ago. And I think had maybe the acidity had maybe softened a little bit, but quality-wise is pretty consistent. I don't know, that's sort of a roundabout way, but if you're wondering about ageability of this wine, I'd say this wine will go about 3 years. I don't think it's definitely not a 10-year wine. I think enjoying that sort of really elemental, fresh, juicy fruit is what this wine's all about.
Awesome. So cheddar cheese and dark chocolate, that's what we end with naturally. The Hermitage, of course, would go with a number of different cheeses. And I think we were right at your suggestion, Justin, to switch the wines around, because the Merlot goes much better with the dark chocolate. anyway, we'll get to socialization in a minute. Thank you so much for joining us, Justin.
Very welcome.
Really appreciate your coming and your wealth of knowledge. And I'd love to talk to you afterwards about travel, whether or not you've been to some of the regions and your wines and stuff like that. And other than dropping off wines this time, this is the first time we haven't actually met before. So anyway, I'm looking forward to future events with you.
Excellent.
Co-host Marilyn and the food kits, Dorothy, Lorraine, Kathy, and Carl and Ann couldn't be with us this time. They were up at the cottage, but Dorothy, Lorraine, Kathy, I tried your patience, I know, this time. So the wines are all available for sale, of course. The Chianti is available both in the half bottle and a full bottle. So we'll send out a list of what's available. We'll send out a follow-up email. And then if you want some of the wines, and truly, if you want some of the Gigan Hermitage, just let me know, because I will be buying some. And next month, yeah, there'll be something again new and different. And the wine and food pairings will be picked up at Maryland's. All good. So you know what? Hang around for as long as you want. Oh, Rob normally joins us for the closing remarks, but he had to leave early tonight. So you got stuck with me.
And never stuck with you, Teresa. So if you're all willing, what I'm going to do is ask you if you would like to share your video, and I'll give you a couple of minutes to think about that. I'm going to go and do a full screen view just so we can take a screenshot of all of your beautiful faces. You've been giving beautiful comments about how great the night has been, and thank you. And Lynn, of course, moose and squirrel, and she'll know what that means. So I'm going to give you a countdown from 5. If you could grab your glass with your favorite thing in it, and in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, hold your glass up and say cheers. Hold and hold. I'm taking your screenshot.
Cheers.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. So anyway, no hurry to leave.
That was my Merlot. But I would like to order some of that Rose Hermitage.
Awesome.
Yeah. So
Okay.
actually, because he's only got 6 cases left, maybe we should buy the rest of it.
Okay, well, you know what? You guys let me know tomorrow.
Okay.
Sooner rather than later. Yeah. And I'm definitely going to have some.
I'm going to take 6 bottles because I owe people favors. And that's a good favor repayer.
Someone has asked about ordering. There will be an order sheet that is sent out. Angela will do that.
Yes.
So you'll have
that's
that.
going to go out tomorrow or in the next couple of days. Anyway, and you'll know how to order and how to pay and all that kind of stuff.
Outliners, really.
And if anybody has any direct questions they think of later and want to follow up with me, email's a great way. Email address is justin@vintagetrade.com. So very simple, justin@vintagetrade.com. Feel free to shoot me an email if you have specific questions about any of these wines, anything else. We do sort of a monthly email about sort of new wines that we have coming in, upcoming tastings, events. If you reach out to me that way, we can kind of keep you in the loop about that type of stuff as well.
Also, Justin, if you have any specials going on or promotions or anything, please let us know, because we'll post them on Facebook. We'll post them on our website. Angela handles all of that, and our members go there for promotions and ideas and wine sales. Yeah,
and we have a range of stuff. Generally, we get everything from, we have some good core wines, which some of them we tasted tonight, such as the Gruner Veltliner and the Merlot. Those are some of our core wines. The Prosecco is another one we always have around. And then we get lots of very, very limited stuff. We just got some Napa Cab where our allocation 3 packs. So we get
send it to us and we'll send it out to the members.
Excellent.
Justin, I get regular emails from Vinexx. Is that basically your stuff too?
Yeah, I think there's sort of the Vinexx promotion, and then we'll do some other one. I just sort of have also client base as well that I'll sort of more tailor my.
Okay, so I should add you to my list. Okay. Thank you very much. It was very nice.
And that was a
I
great
don't know,
presentation.
this would make a nice little bottle for a little bit of wine left over, but I'm wondering whether it would be worth it. You should probably drink it rather than put it in this little bottle, right?
The bottle's about 30 mils.
Yeah.
Um,
Two sips.
it won't
You're
be
at
way-
home, you're not driving, I would just drink it.
Drink it.
But save the bottle.
Yeah, I was
Marilyn?
gonna say, if you want to maybe experiment and see how the wine tastes sort of the next day, you could throw some in there, and that might give you a sense of that, because that sort of that little bit of oxidation actually helps sort of see what a wine might look like in the future, which is kind of interesting.
Okay.
But otherwise, it's 30 mils.
It's the same size bottle my CBD comes in.
I'm not certain what unicorn Lynn is speaking of. It's the one called leftover wine. I've heard tell of this mythical creature like the Loch Ness monster, but yeah.
When you're sitting by yourself and you've got 6 bottles of open wine here.
Hey, I'm really glad there's some leftovers.
Actually, I didn't.
Good on you, Lynn.
I didn't open them all. I opened all the reds, but I didn't open all the whites, I have to admit, because I thought, oh God, what a waste. So I will have to save the video and review it later when I get around to opening the Gruner Veltliner and the Classico Superior, because I didn't actually open those.
The good thing though, if you are sort of used with sort of a selection of wines like this, especially white wines, if you open them and then close them up, put them in the fridge, they're usually good for a good 3-4 days, I'll find. Sparkling wine even more so if it's kind of in a, I wouldn't put it in the door of your fridge, which is being open, but it's a stable place.
They would still be hauling me out to the ladies' den as a sodding drunk if I drank wine by myself in 3 or 4 days.
And one actually comment, a lot of people might think
Join one
you
of
should
the
never
other,
put red
so
wine in the
Lynn,
fridge,
join
but,
one of the other
other than that,
groups
if you do a taste,
for the tastings and share the wines. Come to my house next time, or go to Maryland's, or another one of the Von Baron group.
But I was just one last item on that, sort of keeping wine. A lot of people might think you shouldn't put red wine in the fridge, but if you want to taste a red wine and you know you're not going to have another glass for another couple days, throw that in the fridge as well. Being cold actually slows down the oxidation process. So that's actually a great way. I do that myself. If I know if I'm tasting a wine and I know I'm not going to get back to it for a few days, I'll put it in the fridge, and then you just have to have the just to remember to take it out in advance. Or the better way is you pour yourself a glass, put the glass on the counter, put the red wine back in the fridge, and then let that glass warm up. Or the other secret that I love having, which I use in the industry, is my Corvin. So these are maybe an
Tracks the air.
investment up front, but they're a great way if you want to just kind of try a few ounces of wine out of a bottle. They're brilliant. So it's a way actually you pull wine out of the bottle without removing the cork. And
Cool.
what it does is actually injects argon gas into the bottle. So it's an inert gas which replaces the oxygen. So it's even better than pulling the cork and using a fancy spray
Oh, okay.
or a pump. This does everything. So it's a bit of an extravagance as far as initial setup cost, but for what I do on a daily basis, it allows me to take a bottle of wine, which I could maybe use over 2 days, but I can stretch a bottle of wine over a month to sample with customers. And
So it's great for an agent that's going around and doing sample tasting.
Yep.
For somebody in your home where you're drinking a bottle of wine or sharing a bottle of wine or whatever, it's a judgment call.
But if it's a person by themselves, it's a good solution.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. No, I know it's maybe
You
that's
want to
it.
do the one? Yep.
The group of people,
is
it's not worth
Drill
kind of
through the
the
cork.
expense of the gas to use it, but if you just want to take a couple sips out of a bottle, see how it's evolving, or if that's what you want to drink that night, it's something great to have.
Mm.
But they are, as I said, the initial investment is fairly expensive on it. Like a quart now runs about 300 to 350.
How much?
Wow.
300 plus.
Justin,
Anyway.
Justin, we're being asked, what is that? What is the name of it? So I can type it out to everyone.
Corvin.
Corvin.
Sorry, what?
Hold it up. So
Overvin?
Coravin.
Oh,
Marilyn,
Colin.
I can
Oh,
give it.
Overvin.
Got it. Okay.
So yeah, again, it's maybe not.
Yeah.
It was actually invented
Wine
by
after
an
we-
enthusiast for using at home when his wife was pregnant, and he wanted to keep consuming wine. But yeah, for my line of work, it's invaluable at home. I use it at home as well, but it's one of those things that I'd say decanting into half bottles or using the fridge is a great way to kind of maintain your wines as well.
Lynn, if you need some help drinking that wine, I'm free. FYI.
So universally across the board, very positive feedback. Justin, thank you so much. People were excited, and I've already seen 2 orders come in. So lots of cheers and high fives from everyone in the room. I need to jump off, so I'll be stopping the recording, but Teresa will still be here if you want to socialize. And we look forward to seeing you again. Same bat time, same bat channel.
Thank you, Justin.
Thank you.
Thanks for everyone for having me.
Thank you very much.
Wines, lovely wines.